Under this session, we will discuss about the other types of natural resources like hydrosphere and lithosphere. We know that 75% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. So, what are the different water sources on Earth? So, the large surface of the water is covered with sea and ocean, which is saline. And the fresh water resources are the ice cap, underground water, and water in rivers, lakes, and pond. Why is water considered as a wonder liquid? Because it supports the large part of cellular process. So whatever transportation or exchange of material happens within the cell or across the cell happens in the aqueous phase. The substances also transport from one part of a body to the other part in a dissolved form, and the life form on earth get rid of its high salt concentration through water. So the number and the variety of plants and animals present on the area depends upon the availability of water. But there are certain problems which contaminates the quality of water, hence leading it to water pollution. So what is water pollution? It's a contamination of water or water bodies with unwanted and harmful substances. And what causes the contamination? Yes, there are few sources of water pollution, namely fertilizers and pesticides from the field are washed into the water bodies during the rainy season. The second source will be the sewage or the domestic waste from the towns and cities are dumped in the river bodies, including the factory effluent. Then the third source of water pollution is in factories, water is used as a coolant to cool down the temperature of machines. So the hot water, the heat is absorbed by the water, and this hot water is thrown into the water bodies, due to which there is a fluctuation of temperature of this water body. The temperature of the water in the rivers can affect when the water is released from the dam. That is, in the reservoir, in the dam, the water at the bottom is cold, whereas on the surface, the water gets heated by creating a temperature difference, a shift in the temperature. So let us see what happens due to these sources of water pollution. What are the consequences of water pollution? So once the fertilizers and pesticides which are washed off from the field and farm, they mixes with the water bodies, they contaminate or change the quality of water. Example, the mercury salt which is being used in the paper industry mixes with the water and become toxic for the aquatic animals. Even people who are staying near the river area, if they consume such water, it affects their health too. Apart from that, the sewage which comes from the cities and factories, when it is dumped in the water bodies, it contains few disease causing bacteria like cholera, etc. And the third consequence is the dissolved oxygen. The aquatic animals take up oxygen which is present in the water in the form of dissolved oxygen. When the level of contaminant in the water increases, that depletes the dissolved oxygen, which affects the aquatic organisms. Then, like we have already discussed, one of the source of water pollution is the temperature fluctuation of water due to dumping of hot water from the factory and industry into the water bodies. So what happens when hot water is being thrown in the water bodies? It affects the breeding of eggs and larvae of an aquatic animals, affecting their diversity and their breeding process. Like water pollution, soil also undergoes a soil pollution. So before discussing about soil pollution, let us see what is soil. Soil is a loose surface material consisting both of organic and inorganic matter. We have already learnt in our lower classes how is soil formed. Soil is formed by the withering of rocks by physical, chemical and biological process where the larger chunks of these rocks are broken down into a fine particle. There are few factors or processes involved in the soil formation, namely sun, wind, water and living organisms. Let us discuss one by one about each factor. So during the day, due to sun rays, the rock gets heated up and the molecules expands or the rock expands, and during the night the rocks cool down. So the continuous expansion and contraction causes the rock to develop a crack, and later if this keeps happening for a long period of time, the rock breaks into a smaller pieces which later constitute into soil. The second factor is wind. When wind blows, it wears off or corrodes the rock surface and it carries a small particle, and again it comprises of or it constitutes into a soil. Third factor is water. So water forms soil in two ways. During winter, we have already seen due to the sun, the contraction and cooling down of rock creates a crack. So when water gets into such crack, it develops into an ice after freezing and expands the crack or widens the crack, leading to breaking of rock into smaller particles. The second type of soil formation due to water is when the water flows in the form of river or stream, it washes off or it causes an aberration and washes off the topmost surface of the rock and again adds to the soil. The fourth type of factor is living organisms. So these living organisms like lichen or moss, they grow on the surface of the rock. They produce certain chemical substances with which will erode the surface of the rock. Then the root of a big tree sometimes causes a crack on these rocks, converting them into soil. As you can see in this image, the trees are growing its root and the root are cracking the rock. What is the composition of soil? The soil comprises of small particle of rock. It also have humus, which is dead living organisms or decaying organisms. It also contains few bacteria and microscopic life form. And depending upon the mineral of topsoil, which contains humus, the biodiversity of the soil is also decided. If the topsoil contains more humus, you will find the wider the biodiversity of these organisms in the soil. But the human activities lead to the soil pollution. So removal of useful component from soil and addition of some other adversely affect the fertility of the soil, and if the fertility of the soil is affected, it kills the diversity of organism that lives in the soil, causing a soil pollution. Next issue with the soil is soil erosion. If we cut down the trees which holds the top soil, this topsoil washes off with the flowing water and wind, leading to the rock which is beneath to get exposed. So when you cut down the trees, the humus get lost from the topsoil. Second, the soil gets washed off in the form of soil erosion, exposing the rock surface of the earth. And this is accelerated, and this you can see mainly in hilly or mountain region where soil erosion is very prominent. Now, what is the remedy for the soil erosion? The first and the foremost remedy is planting more trees, reforestation. We all know that as the forest area increases, the root holds the topsoil so that soil erosion is prevented. So in this session, we saw the natural resources like hydrosphere and lithosphere.